Hello, and welcome back for some more Mechyard survival. In the last episode, we discovered that we were having some serious power issues because I have built a few too many robots, and I'm relying entirely on renewable energy, so it's taking quite a bit to keep all the batteries on all these mechs running. And to deal with that situation, we decided that it was about time to start mass producing some ice so we can eventually get up to space sometime soon and go find ourselves some uranium, because, well, uranium and reactors are basically the best power source for building mechs, really. They're pretty lightweight and pretty powerful compared to batteries, so we could really do with getting some of them. So, to facilitate this plan, I have started building this drilling mech behind me, but the Mantis has decided to pop up and get right in the way at the perfect time. See you later, mate. So yeah, we've got this drill rig behind me. Or at least the beginnings of a drill rig. So far, we've only got a basic cockpit, a basic walk cycle, and a few essential parts. There's still a lot of work to do on this thing. But we have the almost finished walk cycle computer, and the not even started drill rig computer. We'll sort that out soon enough. But at the moment, we have a basic walk cycle set up, so that it can walk along at relatively slow speed, because I don't need this thing to be plodding around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I actually need it to walk quite slowly so it can take its time gathering ice. And this one has my usual thruster-powered vanilla walk cycle system. So that little rear-facing thruster just under the cockpit is what drives the whole mechanism. So the next big task is to get this computer sorted out so that we can get this drill rig functioning, and then we can do a little bit of testing to see how well this thing can walk and how well it can scrape the ground for resources. So we will move on to building the computer. But before all that, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank my YouTube channel members, Engineered Coffee, Nereo, The Great Null, and Unleashed 20. Thank you guys for all of your support, it is very much appreciated. And I would like to take a moment to say a very special thank you to our Lord and Saviour, also known as Black Armour, who contacted me recently to say that he watches my content and enjoys my designs. So thank you very much, dude. That is possibly the biggest compliment a mech engineer could receive. So now, back to the acting. Okay then, so what I want to do with this computer, for a start, is I want to make an on-off switch for the whole thing, so that we can turn it all on and off with a single button press. So the way I usually do switches like that is the bare minimum, is I have some kind of block to turn on and off, usually a light or an LCD, because it also acts as a visual indicator as well as a button. And then we'll have an event controller that is being triggered by that light, and then the event controller will turn off a pair of blocks, which I usually just name whatever the thing is on and whatever the thing is off. And those two timers can be the start of the on and off functions, and then we can add whatever functions and systems into those two blocks that we need. And then sometimes I top it off with a on-off timer switch that will literally just trigger this light turning on and off, and that way we can have a nice little timer button on the toolbar, and we can also have the option to turn the entire system off by turning off that timer. So, to get it started, we've got our drill rig controller, which will be block switched on and off. We will control it with that light that we've built. And then to make the basis of our on and off button, we will select these two timers. The very first thing we'll do is turn the off one off in the first slot and the on one off in the second slot. And that ensures they both turn off before we activate the next thing we want to do. So in the first slot, we want to turn on, so it turns on when we activate the light. And in the second slot, we want to turn the drill off on, so that activates when we turn the light off. And then the next step is to trigger the drill system on in the first slot and trigger the drill system off in the second slot, and that is it. All the basics of making a simple binary switch. So now if we turn this light on and off, you can see the event controller triggering and the two timers switching on and off. And that way it ensures that we're not accidentally triggering actions on the wrong block at the wrong time. Now the next step is to add in all the functions that we need. And what I usually do for things like this is create binary actions using more lights and more event controllers. And then that way we don't have to worry about adding dozens of different little actions into the two timers, like pistons extending and retracting and rotors turning and all that kind of stuff. So what we need to do is we need one action for the piston, we need one action for the hinges opening up, we need a third one for the rotor turning, and then a fourth one for the drills turning on. And what I like to do next is to build some lights to control this stuff. And if I'm setting it into the floor like this, I usually put the lights on the inside, because if we do it that way around, we can get another event controller or timer just about into that gap, whereas a light will not fit, or it will, but it'll be much moodier. So I usually put the lights on the inside. Right, now we just need to name these quickly, and then we can build the event controllers. And now that we have our control lights, we can sort out the event controllers that they are going to trigger. And now that we have those event controllers named and built, we can get around to setting them up. So we can go into the control panel, and here we have the controllers we've just built. So we'll start with the drills one. They are all going to be block on off, and we can select all of the appropriate lights. And we will quite simply just turn on and off all of the drills one by one. And then for the drill hinges, it'll be the same thing, block switched on and off, and select the appropriate light. And then we just need to add the set velocity function to each of these hinges. So to start with, we'll have -5 to open each hinge up, and then we'll have +5 to close them back up again, because of the way I've oriented the hinges. And then we've got our drill rig piston. And this one will quite simply just be extend and retract. And then last but not least, we can do the drill rig rotor. And for the drill rig rotor, I want to do something slightly different with this one. I want it to turn on, and I want to start spinning, but I also want it to return to its default position when it turns off. So in order to do that, we are going to use some of the new functions. Now, when we use this rotate to angle function, what it'll do is it'll set one of the angles to the limit that you set, and the other one it will just set to unlimited. So when you use this, it will break any limits that you've set up beforehand. So if you're going to use it, you need to program at least one command to reset the limits that you want for your rotor or hinge. So the first thing we're going to do in this action is we are going to use the set lower and set limit actions. And we'll set the lower limit to -361 because that tells the game to put that rotor into unlimited mode. And we will do the same thing for the upper limit, except it'll be 361. So now that rotor will go into unlimited rotor limits when we turn it on. Then we can just tell it to go at whatever velocity we like. So we'll go with 5 for that. And then when it turns off, we want to choose the rotate to angle function. Set it to 0 at 5 RPM, and the direction doesn't really matter because we are going to reset the limits anyway. And that should be that for those binary commands. And now that we've got all of those set up, we can give them a little bit of a test run. So we'll start with all the lights switched off and try them out one by one. So turn on the first light, the drills extend and retract. You turn on the second light, the rotor spins and returns to its default position. Fantastic. Try out the third one. The hinges extend. Oop. Yeah, I might have to change that upper limit to stop them crashing into each other. And then the fourth one, the drills work. Fantastic. So we now have all the bits in place to begin programming the drilling sequence. Now I want this drill to deploy in sequence rather than everything just activating all at once. So we need to figure out what that sequence is going to be. So the first thing that will happen is that piston will extend, and then when we get to however far we want to, we can get it to then activate the rest of the bits. And I think we might keep this computer fairly simple and just have one stage for the event controllers. So when this piston reaches full extension, it will then activate the rotor, the hinges and the drills. And now that we've got that controller set up, I have named it drill rig deploy, and we will make this look at the piston position. We'll select the drill rig piston, and for now we'll go with 75%. So when it gets to 3/4 of its full extension, it will then turn on the rest of the drill lights. So we'll have it turn on and turn off the drill rotor, turn on and turn off the drill hinges, and turn on and turn off the drills themselves. And now that we have that controller set up, if we turn on the drill piston light, it should deploy everything when it gets to 75%. There we go, everything is activated and turned on. If we turn it off, when it comes back past 75%, it will reset everything. And now in our drill on and off timers, we can just set up some basic controls. And for the moment, all we need to do is turn on and off that drill piston light. And we can add more functions to those timers as we develop the drill rig a little bit more, because I want to add lights and alarms and all that kind of stuff to it too. But for now, that's a pretty decent basic setup, and now we should just be able to turn this light on and off and activate the entire thing. There we go. That is activated. That light is blinking. If we turn that back off, it resets the whole system. And now we can add that light into that timer and have a simple on-off control for the entire thing. There we go, that's all we need to do. Is just add the on-off function to this timer. Now when we trigger it, it turns the whole thing on and off for us. And now we can just hit that timer on the toolbar to activate and deactivate the entire thing. And now that we've got a basic walk cycle and some basic drill rig controls sorted out, I suppose it's time that we cut this thing down and gave it a little test run. Okay, so we are detached now. We can jump into the cockpit and take this thing for a spin. So we can see the gyro controllers working there. Might be a little bit too powerful. And the walk cycle seems to work okay. The feet are catching a little bit, but that's one of the problems of using suspensions. Alright, we'll take him a little bit further away from the base, so we're not tearing up the ground immediately around the Mechyard. And we'll give the drill rig system a test. I know we're going to be using stone instead of ice, but it's the best thing we've got right now. And we'll see how well this thing can scrape the ground whilst in motion. Okay, well we are a couple hundred meters from the base, so I think we're in a good place to do a bit of testing. So, first thing, we can activate our drilling rig system, and then we can start walking. And while we're walking, we can have a look at how much stone we're capturing. And how quickly. Grabbing it at a decent rate. Now, do we need to lift those drills slightly? Are they smacking into the floor? They might be. So we'll attract that drilling rig. We'll bring ourselves to a stop. So that was only walking for a minute or so at most, and it picked up about 160 tons of stone. So hopefully it'll work about the same for the ice. And now, to get rid of this stuff, I have begun setting up an ejector system. Well, I have put some of the pieces in place for an ejector system. Now we get to set it up so we can get rid of all that stone again. And now we can set up our ejector system properly. So we've got the sorter, stick that on whitelist, and for now we will just have it chucking out stone. Stick it on drain all, and then we'll have all of the connectors set up as ejectors, so they'll collect all and throw out. You don't need to use it for parking, you don't need any magnetic strength or any of that business. And I also don't need to see any of them in the inventory screen. And then if we turn that on, we can start dumping out stone. And getting rid of that relatively quickly. And now we can add those ejectors into our drilling on and off controls. So if we go to drill system on, we can take all of these ejectors and we can turn them all on. And if we go to drill system off, we can turn them all off again. And now, if we give him another little test run, he should drill that stone and chuck it out the back at the same time. There we go, he's disposing of the stone as he's drilling it, in case we come across any unwanted stuff while we're drilling for ice. And those ejectors are doing a pretty good job of keeping it all out. We turn them off. It'll fill the sorter up and then it'll start filling the containers. So that should fill up quite nicely with ice whilst getting rid of any unwanted things like stone. Right, I'm happy with that. On to the next phase. Well then, after doing that testing, the next phase will be working on the interiors a little bit. I think I'm going to need more than just 2 O2H2 generators, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to need more than 1 large grid battery. So we will do a little bit of internal work, and then we'll have to move on to the next phase, which is the transport ships. I need 1 for gas and 1 for moving this whole rig 20 kilometers. That's going to be interesting. And there you go, that'll do for now. A little bit of armour, some Gatling turrets for a bit of defence, and a few little bits of interior detail. I've moved the emergency hydrogen engine, I've moved the battery around, I've added some turret controllers for those guns, although they do need setting up. We've got a little bit of internal lighting. I've also swapped the O2H2 generators to face inside instead of outside. And I've expanded the catwalks as well a little bit. And I've left the back end open for now, because the next thing we really need to do is figure out what we're going to do about a little tanker transport ship that can land on the back and fuel up with the hydrogen that we've been processing, and then fly back to the base somewhere and land and dock and unload all that hydrogen. But first, before that, I would like to add a few solar panels to the top of this thing, because we're going to need a bit of renewable energy as we go, because I don't think this battery is going to be able to handle all the stuff that we're doing. And also, it needs a way of recharging, and I don't particularly want to fuel it on the precious hydrogen that I'm mining in the first place. So, we'll throw a few solar panels on the roof somewhere and see how much charge that's taking. Right then, I have added a bunch of solar panels, and I've made a few more little adjustments here and there, and I'm pretty happy with what we've got. He can walk nice and steadily at a nice reasonable pace. He can turn pretty well for his size. We've got plenty more room to add more gyros if necessary. And the only thing really left to do with this thing now is to figure out this transport ship deal. We need a little tanker ship to ferry hydrogen back and forth. So we'll have a look at that next. Okay, well, now that we've got the basics of this drill rig mech sorted out, it's time to have a good think about how we're going to make this gas transport ship. Now, I'm planning to just make it small grid for now. And we're going to need a connector, obviously. We are going to need a couple of large hydrogen tanks, possibly some O2. And I might want to ship some of that over here as well if we're going to space. We do need to breathe after all. And then we need some kind of control and cockpit AI blocks, and some weapons to defend itself just in case. So we'll have a look at some ideas now and see what we can come up with. hydrogen. Oh, what? Not drones again. Oh god, here they come. Oh wow, look at that though. Ah, loads of bullets. One. Take them out. One. Two down. Oh, come on. Why aren't you doing anything? What's that mini battery up to? Oh, that is a lot of bullets. Come on. Wow. Come on. Come on, you can get him. Come on, he must be nearly done. Oh, there he goes. There he goes. Nice. Right. I need to do a damage check. I need to see what got smashed then. Oh god. There's debris everywhere. Okay, well, after that little incident, one of the mini batteries did get a little bit damaged, so I had to take some time to repair him and get him back up to scratch again. But luckily, nothing important that we were working on right now got damaged. So here we have my idea, or at least the skeleton of my idea for a gas transport ship, which I have called the Moth. And it's a little vanilla subgrid contraption. It's got a little turret on top. It's got 4 large H2 tanks and 4 large O2 tanks for transporting gas back and forth. And I've been working on a slightly more complicated docking system for this one, which I will show you in a moment. But first, it's got the usual docking controls, so if we detach, all the control stuff kicks into place. It's got a sensor on the bottom to make the wings retract and deploy when it gets too close to the landing pad. There you go. And we come away from it again. And it's got some vanilla subgrid thruster controls for the forwards and backwards, and for the left and right. And now I can show you the docking sequence I've been working on. Because this thing is slightly more complicated. I want it to fly back and forth between 2 points, and I want it to have a docking sequence that can adjust to the movements of the drill rig walking around. So I've come up with a docking system that is made up of quite a few different AI blocks. We've got a whole bunch of AI recorder blocks, a couple of task blocks, and a move block. And they all work together to help the Moth travel between the drill rig and the Mechyard. And we have a pair of event controllers that are looking at a set of lights, and when all of these lights light up, it triggers the appropriate sequence. And we have a couple of event controllers looking at various things on the ship, like battery level and tank levels. And when those event controllers are triggered, they turn on a light. And these 2 launch controllers, when combination of those 2 lights turn on, it will then trigger the appropriate launching sequences. So as you can see there, the battery full light is on, and if I click on the fuel full light, it will engage the launching sequence and then the docking sequence to head back to the base. There we go, it has now docked at the base. And in reverse, when the ship has landed and it has then drained its tanks out and it's empty and it is ready to return back to the drill rig, the fuel empty light will turn on and then he will launch and engage his trip back to the drill rig. And there we go, we have returned back to the drill rig. Now the next step is to get this guy armoured up, do a bit more work on the docking bay, and then we're going to have to figure out how to make a transport ship big enough to move this entire rig 20 kilometres for us. And that one's going to be interesting. But I think we'll do all of that stuff next time, so thanks for watching and goodbye for now.